The training hall of the Galactic Academy buzzed with quiet energy. Rows of young cadets from many planets sat behind shining desks, their attention fixed on the front where holographic combat maps floated in the air. Some whispered, some looked bored, and others were already dreaming of the glory that came with wearing a soldier's badge. But one cadet sat differently from the rest. At the very back, almost blending into the metallic walls, sat Lyra Van. Her pale blue skin reflected the light softly, and her violet eyes rarely met anyone's gaze. She sat straight, silent, and still. Every day she came early, took the same seat, and left last. She spoke to no one. Many cadets had started rumors about her. Some said she came from a royal alien family. Others said she was strange, maybe even dangerous. But nobody really knew. That morning, Lieutenant Mark Hale entered the hall for the first time. He was not a cadet, he was a soldier. He had just returned from a frontier mission and been assigned as a temporary instructor's assistant. His uniform was darker, his shoulders broader, and his eyes carried the calmness of someone who had seen real battles. When he stepped into the room, all heads turned. The young recruits straightened in their seats. Mark gave a short nod, scanning the room quickly. Then his eyes stopped at the back row, the quiet girl. She sat perfectly still, eyes on her datapad, fingers folded neatly. She didn't even flinch under his gaze. Something about her calmness in a noisy room caught his attention. Instructor Darnell, a tall human veteran with a sharp voice, walked in after him. "Attention, cadets," he barked. "Today we test your reaction speed and focus under pressure. You will enter simulation pods and face real-time combat patterns." The cadets saluted, excitement and fear flashing in their faces. Mark stood by the control panels, checking the systems. Darnell began calling names, pairing students for training duels. When he reached Lyra's name, his tone shifted slightly. "Cadet Lyra Vane," he said slowly. "Still sitting in the back, I see. Afraid to face the front lines?" The class chuckled softly. Lyra didn't answer. She simply rose, bowed her head slightly, and walked to her simulation pod. Her quiet grace silenced the laughter. Mark frowned. Something in Darnell's tone didn't sound right. The instructor was strict, yes, but this sounded personal. As the simulation began, holographic soldiers and drones filled the room inside the pods. Mark watched the data screens. Every cadet's score appeared in green lines: reaction time, defense, aim, and control. Most of the students were struggling. But one line moved smoothly and fast: Lyra's. Her rhythm was calm, controlled, and sharp. She didn't panic or hesitate. Her training pattern was beautiful to watch. Even Darnell seemed surprised at first. Then his face darkened. He leaned toward the screen, eyes narrowing. "How does she have access to that formation code?" He muttered. Mark looked over. "Formation code? You mean the elite sequence? Maybe she just figured it out." Darnell's tone hardened. "No cadet should even know it exists." He tapped the screen. "This is restricted information." Before Mark could respond, Darnell switched off the safety protocol. Inside the pods, the simulation drones changed from harmless blue holograms to bright red. Their weapons shifted. No longer soft light beams, but plasma stun mode. The cadets didn't notice right away, but Mark did. He looked at Darnell sharply. "Sir, you activated live mode." Darnell didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on Lyra's pod. The drones inside Lyra's pod began to attack faster, harder. Lyra moved quickly, her body responding like someone with years of combat training. Still, she was surrounded. The drone weapons sparked dangerously close to her. Mark shouted, "Stop the simulation." "She'll get hurt." Darnell slammed his fist on the console. "She's a spy, Lieutenant. You don't understand. She's not supposed to be here." Before Mark could ask what he meant, the drones in every pod began to malfunction. They burst through the simulation barriers, stepping into the real training hall as red holograms turned into solid metal. Sparks flew. The cadets screamed. Mark reacted before thinking. He grabbed the sidearm from his belt and jumped forward as one of the drones aimed at a group of students. He fired 3 short bursts, knocking it down. "Everyone down," he shouted. The hall turned into chaos. Cadets hid behind desks. Others tried to reach the exit, but the door had locked automatically. Lyra stepped out of her pod slowly, breathing fast. One drone aimed directly at her chest. Mark ran. Without a second thought, he threw himself between her and the weapon. The plasma bolt hit his shield instead, the shock pushing him backward. He ignored the pain and returned fire, shooting the drone through its sensor. Lyra looked at him in surprise, her wide eyes glowing faintly under the emergency lights. "You okay?" Mark asked quickly. She nodded, though her voice trembled. "Yes, but they won't stop," she was right. The rest of the drones were now targeting them both. Mark motioned for her to move behind him, but she stepped to his side instead. Together they faced the machines. She moved with fluid grace, her hand glowing faintly as if controlling something unseen. One drone's aim suddenly shifted away, crashing into another. Mark noticed but said nothing. He just covered her flank. After several tense minutes, the last drone fell to the ground in sparks. Smoke filled the air. Alarm screamed through the academy. Mark turned to Darnell, but the instructor was gone. The console was broken and the override key was missing. Security forces stormed into the hall moments later, surrounding the area. They helped the cadets out while scanning for threats. Mark lowered his weapon, breathing hard. He looked at Lyra again. Her glowing hands were dimming and she looked pale. He caught her before she could fall. "You need a medic," he said. But she shook her head weakly. "No, they'll take me. They'll say I caused this. What are you talking about?" Her voice was low, urgent. "I didn't trigger the drones. I was being watched. Someone wanted to test if I'd defend myself." Mark frowned. "Who would want that?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Not who. What?" Before he could ask more, Academy security approached. The lead officer saluted. "Lieutenant Hale will handle her from here. Orders from command." Mark didn't like the sound of that. She saved half the class. "You should thank her, not arrest her." The officer's eyes stayed cold. "Orders, sir." Lyra looked at Mark, her expression calm again, but her eyes carried a quiet sadness. "You shouldn't have helped me," she said softly. "Now they'll come for you too." Mark didn't answer. He watched as two guards gently escorted her out. The hall was a mess of broken drones, scorched walls, and confused cadets. The air smelled of burnt metal and ozone. But beneath all that, Mark felt something else, a wrongness deep and heavy. He turned toward the empty control station. The damage was too clean, too exact. Whoever Darnell had been, he knew what he was doing. Later that night, as he filed his report in the dim office room, he replayed the events over and over. He could still see the way Lyra moved, the calmness in her eyes when everyone else panicked, the strange glow on her arms, the way Darnell had called her a spy. He opened the security footage on his terminal, but half the files were missing. Someone had erased them. Mark leaned back in his chair, thinking. A strange unease crept into his gut. He had seen infiltrations before, enemy soldiers pretending to be allies, but this felt different. The academy was supposed to be safe. Then a soft chime interrupted his thoughts. His datapad flashed. A message appeared, no sender name. "Just a line of text. Trust no one." They already replaced him. Mark stared at the message for a long time. Then he looked out through the window where the academy's silver towers gleamed under the moonlight. Somewhere inside those towers, Lyra was being questioned, maybe even blamed. He stood up slowly, sliding his datapad into his belt. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. And he wasn't about to let that quiet girl face it alone. As he walked down the corridor, the lights flickered once. A faint echo of mechanical noise came from somewhere deep in the building. Mark's hand moved to his weapon automatically. His soldier instincts whispered one thing. The attack wasn't over. It was just beginning. The academy was under lockdown. Red lights flashed across the corridors, alarms echoed faintly, and armed guards patrolled every level. No one spoke loudly. Even footsteps sounded tense in the silence. Lieutenant Mark Hale walked through the empty training hall from the night before. Burnt metal, broken drones, and shattered glass still covered the floor. The air smelled like smoke and fear. He stopped beside the broken console where Instructor Darnell had stood. His nameplate was still there, but the man himself had vanished. The Academy's command claimed they were investigating, yet Mark hadn't seen a single report. Everything about the incident was being buried. He crouched near the damaged panel and noticed something strange. Melted wires, but not from plasma fire. It looked more like acid corrosion. He touched it carefully and pulled back a tiny metal shard shaped like a data key. On its side were faint alien letters glowing in blue. Mark frowned. "That's not human tech," he muttered. He pocketed the shard and left the hall quietly. Lyra Vahan sat alone in a glass observation room deep below the academy. Two guards stood outside, motionless. She wore a silver restraint band around her wrist, Soft light blinked on it, scanning her energy levels. She stared at the table, silent as always. In her mind, memories repeated. Her father's warning before she left her home planet. You will be watched, Lyra. Trust no one until you know who they truly are. She had joined the academy to learn about humans, to understand their courage. But now she realized she was the one understudy. Someone wanted to use her as bait. The door hissed open. Mark stepped inside, his boots echoing on the floor. The guards didn't stop him. He had the authority of a combat officer. Lyra looked up, surprised. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You said that before. Didn't stop me then. He sat across from her. I came to ask what really happened yesterday. Who was Darnell? She hesitated, then looked at the glowing band on her wrist. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. Lyra took a slow breath. Darnell wasn't human. Not anymore. The real Darnell disappeared 2 weeks ago. What you saw was something wearing his face. A mimic. Mark's eyes narrowed. Mimic tech is banned. Only black market groups use that. Yes, she said softly. And those groups are paid by people who want the Human Alliance Treaty destroyed. My family signed that treaty. Some species see it as a betrayal. So they planted you here to spy. Her tone was steady. No, I came here to protect it. I was supposed to find who among the staff had been replaced. She lowered her eyes. But I failed. They found me first. Mark leaned back, processing her words. Everything suddenly fit. The way Darnell acted, the locked doors, the erased data. He reached into his pocket and placed the small shard on the table. I found this near the console. Yours? Her eyes widened. That's a mimic core fragment. It holds the face pattern of the one who wore Darnell's form. Mark's voice dropped. Can you read it? Lyra hesitated, then touched the shard. Her wristband glowed brighter, responding to her energy. Holographic images flickered above the table. Faces, documents, movement patterns. Then one image froze. A group of instructors standing together, half of whom were already marked as replicates. Mark's jaw tightened. There are more of them. Before they could react, the lights dimmed. An alarm blared, a deeper tone this time. Emergency defense mode. Lyra looked toward the ceiling. They're coming. Who? The others. They know we found the data. Mark pulled her from the seat and opened the side door. The guards outside had already collapsed. Stunned, not killed. Someone had used electric darts. Stay close, Mark said, drawing his sidearm. They moved quickly through the lower corridors. Overhead lights flickered, casting strange shadows. Lyra followed silently, her glowing eyes watching every corner. When they reached the elevator shaft, the control panel was dead. Mark forced the doors open manually. Smoke drifted up from below. We'll take the maintenance path, he said. They climbed up the narrow ladder, the metal cold under their hands. Every few levels they heard faint metallic footsteps echoing below, too synchronized to be human. At the third level, Lyra stopped. They're close. Mark looked down and saw 2 drones crawling up the shaft, their eyes burning red. He drew his pulse gun and fired downward. The shots hit, but the drones kept climbing. Lyra extended her hand, her markings glowing brighter. The air around the drones shimmered, and suddenly both froze mid-air, crushed by an invisible force before falling into darkness. Mark looked at her. Remind me never to annoy you, she gave a faint smile. You couldn't if you tried. They reached the top and entered the restricted hangar level. The wide chamber was filled with grounded ships and dark machinery. Emergency lights painted everything red. Mark moved toward the main terminal. If we can access the command logs, we'll know how deep this goes. Lyra placed her hand on the screen. The system recognized her alien code and unlocked hidden files. Images flashed, schematics, lists of replaced personnel, and a countdown timer labeled Protocol Collapse. Mark read the timer aloud. 2 hours until system purge. They're erasing all evidence, Lyra said. And when it finishes, they'll detonate the reactor to make it look like an accident. Mark cursed softly. We need to stop it. Before they could move, a voice echoed through the hangar. I'm afraid that's not possible. They turned. Standing on the upper walkway was a man wearing Darnell's face again, perfectly calm, smiling faintly. His body flickered, parts of it shifting like smoke. You should have stayed quiet, Lieutenant Hale, the mimic said. And you, Lady Vane, your father would be disappointed. You were supposed to bring division, not unity. Mark raised his weapon. You talk too much, the mimic chuckled. Still the soldier. Let's see how human instinct fares against design. He pressed a device on his wrist. All around the hangar, storage pods opened. Dozens of mimic drones stepped out, eyes glowing red. Mark and Lyra stood back to back. Any bright ideas? Mark asked. Stay alive, she replied calmly. The drones rushed forward. Plasma bolts filled the air. Mark ducked behind a crate, returning fire with sharp precision. Every shot he made was perfect, each movement trained by years of battle. Lyra moved beside him, her markings glowing bright silver. She lifted her hand and a pulse of energy rippled outward, freezing several drones in midair before shattering them like glass. But there were too many. Mark noticed a control console near the wall. If I can overload the defense grid, it'll take them all down, but someone needs to hold the power link steady. I'll do it, Lyra said. It's dangerous. So is dying here, she said simply. Mark nodded once. Okay, on 3. He sprinted toward the console, dodging fire. Lyra stood in the open, glowing brighter and brighter as she drew energy from the hangar systems. Her voice echoed softly in her own language, a sound like wind through water. Mark slammed his hand onto the terminal, pulling wires and rerouting power. Almost there. The mimic appeared behind him fast as lightning. He struck, but Mark spun, blocking with his arm and firing point blank. The shot burned through half the mimic's chest, revealing shifting metal underneath. You can't kill what isn't alive, the mimic hissed. Mark smirked. Good thing I'm not trying to. He pressed the final key. Now, Lyra screamed, not in pain but in power. Light burst from her body, flooding the hangar. Every drone froze, then disintegrated into dust. The mimic staggered, his form melting and collapsing into a pool of metal. The blast shut down the lights. The hangar fell silent, filled only with the hum of fading energy. Mark stumbled toward her. She was on her knees, breathing hard, her markings dimming to faint blue. You did it, he said softly. She looked up weakly. So did you? He helped her stand as the emergency lights flickered back to life. The reactor core stabilized. The countdown had stopped at 0003. Outside, the Academy guards finally arrived, late but alive. They secured the area, scanning the remains. Days later, the investigation confirmed everything. Half the Academy staff had been replaced by mimics over the past months. The infiltration was deep and silent, meant to destroy trust between humans and their alien allies. But because of a soldier's instinct and a quiet cadet's courage, the plan had failed. Weeks passed. The Academy reopened with tighter security.